That was some weather. Well, it finally let up here. Welcome to Six's Overdrive, the home of motorcycles, barbecues, Coca-Cola, filming, and photography. Well, today, guys, we are going to be doing a review on a bike that arguably popularized, you know what I'm trying to say, the whole middleweight naked category. That's right. Today we ride the 765cc Street Triple R from Triumph. Let's get into some history before we hop on the bike. I'm going to tell you right now that this bike, the reason it popularized that category was because of its engine. And that engine first came out in 2006 on the Triumph Daytona. Now that was an all-out sport bike, but having a triple in a sea of 4-cylinder crotch rockets, it was revolutionary. It had this unparalleled combination of horsepower and torque that just couldn't be matched on the 4 cylinders. Now, because of that flexible engine, but it was on a sport bike, it was so versatile that Triumph decided to come out in 2008 with what we see, the first version of kind of this bike, the 2008 Street Triple, and that bike revolutionized the middleweight naked category. Over the Daytona, we've got an unfaired riding style, no clip-on bars, you've got the riser bars, you've got a little bit more comfort all the way around on the bike, but you got the same architecture on the frame and the handling and everything. So it was a beauty right out of the box. So in 2009, the only complaints about the bike was that it was a little bit too softly suspended, the brakes were a little bit mushy, so Triumph addressed that by putting in some R models. Now the Type R gave you some highly upgraded shocks and brakes so you could take your bike out to track day. So then they kept that going for a long time, but in 2012 it was time for a change because the design was getting a little bit long in the tooth. So what Triumph did was a big controversial move, and they took those headlights and they took them off and they put the bug-eyed headlights that are on now today. So that bike kept really good. It was defining a new category, but everybody was scrambling to keep up. So Yamaha, direct rip-off of this bike really, put out the FZ09 at the time in 2014. And then that became so popular. Then the Z900 came out. Then the GSX 750S came out after that. Everybody was copying, but they had higher displacement than the Triumph. So they're outdoing them in the power and fun to drive category. So Triumph had to up the ante a little bit and get this thing up to where those bikes are. So they decided to go into the 765cc that we see today in 2018. Is it gonna be good enough? I don't know. That's why we're here. We're gonna do a seat of the pants review on this thing and see how it really breaks down for power, weight, all these different categories we're gonna get right into today. My buddy Darren was gracious enough to lend us this bike for this review. You might remember him. He's the guy that went straight when there was a corner out in Oregon, wrecked his MT-09, completely totaled it. Well, he's back and he figures he might as well let me ride it or he might wreck it. So let's get on this bike and go for a ride. I'm feeling like a spaceship at the mercy of time. This is an emergency and instance of pro. I'm turning all of a sudden in a pillar of soul. Till I go to my fate, just some moves. Alright, let's start her out and check out that dash. Pretty nice TFT display. You'll get that over the R. Well, you'll get that when you get the R model. The S model comes with a regular dash. This has a lot of functions to it. It's pretty well laid out. All right, let's get our lead rider on his way. Right away when you get on this, compared to the other bikes, you're going to notice that the foot pegs are quite a bit higher. Ooh, she's nice. Very nice. Foot pegs are higher, leaning forward on the riding position. Your riding triangle is way more aggressive. It's definitely a nice bike though. The quick shifter is brilliant. It's really nice. You won't have a problem with that baby at all. That's way smoother than my Tracer 900. So this one is way more confident in the corners. When you're dealing with the MT-09 especially, which was a little bit shaky through the corners, and the XSR 900, which is his brother, the Z900 is very planted. It has a lot more relaxed riding position than this 765 Triumph Street Triple R. I'm just going to briefly go through what the three models are. On Triumph, you can either get the S, the R, or the RS. Now the S and the R are tuned a little bit down low for torque and not so much for horsepower. The RS is way peakier for power, but it's going to pull away from its little brothers because it's got a little bit of extra juice and the power is made for a track. So here's how it goes. The S model you're probably going to want to get is if you don't ever go on the track. It's going to be more comfortable, the suspension's going to be less harsh, yeah, your power is going to be just perfect for in and out of town. And very similar to this one boosts it up a little bit, the torque rev, but it's got nice torque. You can see that to the point where the 675 version was more of you had to clutch up to wheelie. This one can seriously just start lifting the wheel by just a power on wheelie. So that's pretty cool. So there's a lot of big difference in the torque there. When you get to the RS, you're getting the Olin suspension kit and the super brakes and track stuff. There's a bunch of extra TFT modes. And that bike is going to be for the people that want a track day bike that can also drive around in town. This bike here, I think, will be 75% of the purchases because it has most of what you get on the RS, but you have a usable power band for around town, and it's not going to let you down in town. So you can really tell the difference with this bike and the power over the other one. And man, does the quick shifter ever work nicely. My Tracer GT is a little bit clunky with the quick shifter, and this one is golden. Controls are really nice. There's a high level of quality here for controls, and I'm really liking it. Very minimal for wires sticking out. My Yamahas have quite a bit more wires. The dash is really nicely laid out. I don't think it does any more than my Tracer 900 GT does, but it's definitely a nicer dash than my XSR 900. Clutch pull feels really good. Throttle is a bit good. I notice it's a little bit snatchy through the corners, but overall I think it's pretty good. The handling on this thing, I know I'm not on a track here, guys, but I can get a good feel for it. This bike feels taller than the other MT-09 or the Z900. It's just got a feeling to it where you're sitting up on the bike a little bit more. It's more like the XSR 900, but the bars are lower. So if you're looking at it as a touring bike, compared to the other bikes, I don't think it'd be as comfortable as those in a touring capacity. The Z900 and the MT-09 are actually very good when you're on long trips. This one, you're going to get a little tired, but it's very doable. Like, I would easily put on 1,000K a day on this bike. Good brakes, good suspension. The suspension and all the components on this are way more dialed in. The only bike in the class, I think, that rivals this one for handling is the Z900, but it feels a bit like a kid's bike. It's so low to the ground and the pegs are so high that it feels like you're on a kid's bike sometimes, but very well crafted, heaviest one in the bunch. I would say this thing is a great in-town and all-arounder and lives up to the Triumph Street Triple name. It's obviously way better finished than the other bikes are. It's got a nice level of refinement to it, and of course you can go to the Triumph store after and you can get just about anything you want for this bike. The list is endless. Okay guys, so that's basically the seat of the pants feeling on this bike that you get. I've driven it more than seat of the pants. Darren has let me ride this bike before, and it really is a good bike when you get on it and you're comparing it to others. It's just harder than the other bikes. It feels more like a track day bike, but I think a lot of people in this category of class will enjoy that, and they'll like that with the extra money that you pay. But let's go through some of the stats and see what sets it apart and is better and worse than some of the other bikes in some of the categories. Okay, we're back. Let's get into this thing stats-wise. First of all, it stacks up very well against the competition, being the lightest weight and the best fuel range. The one thing you have to be really careful with, you know, it seems like you're comparing apples to apples here when you're talking about price, but you're not. Because remember, the Triumph, it's going to have the price and it's probably going to be plus freight and prep. A lot of times the Japanese bikes, the price is stated and you get them with freight and prep thrown in. So now when you talk about this new 765 compared to the 675, it's a night and day difference. This thing really pulls. It doesn't pull quite as much as an MT-09, but compared to the old 675, it really pulls. Like we're talking about clutch up wheelies on the 675, now you can do a power wheelie on this. The front end does come up on you a little bit when you're flooring it. So they really did a good job upping the displacement, and it's closer to what the Z900 feels like. It's the lightest of the bikes that we're talking about here, the Z900 and the MT-09, and it feels super nimble. The weight is a little bit more like a sport bike where it's carried a little bit higher up, but it's very nimble and it's very stable, very stable. Z900 category for stability. I really like this fuel tank too as well. You've got enough gas in this thing to actually keep you in the saddle for 2 hours. It's going to get about 300 kilometers range. The Japanese bikes, they're not quite there, especially if you're riding hard. If you've watched my video about the bike trip last year, you'll know that we were all struggling to make it to the gas station on time, and this thing would have got us there no problem. It's just got that 20 to 50 extra kilometers that'll just get you there. The other bikes are just short, and you really have to plan out what you're doing for hitting the gas stations before you go on long distances. Now, these are just some of the stats that I think are important on bikes like this. If there's anything that I missed, make sure you write them in the comments below, and then we'll have a little chat about it later. Okay, let's sum this up, guys. Man, this bike is a fun bike. One thing you're really gonna notice is how smooth it is compared to the Japanese bikes. There's no vibration. And the thing where you're driving in second gear around town, a lot of times you're in first gear and it just feels right because it's so silky smooth. There's a lot to like on this bike, including the fit and finish and some of the extras. The TFT dash is the nicest dash I've seen. Now, Kawasaki does have a new one this year. We'll see what that one's like. I haven't had a chance to look at it yet. But riding the bikes all, this one is a clear standout. Not in the comfort category, but for sure in the sportiness category, this thing seems to stand out against the other bikes. The Z900 would be the closest for keeping this thing in its tracks. So that being said, there's plenty of reasons to justify the extra expense because there's no doubt about it. If you're buying this bike off the showroom floor or even used, it's going to cost more than its competition. It's just the way it is. The other thing is, although it's not as comfortable as the other bikes in the class, it'll easily eat up the miles. It's nowhere near sport bike uncomfortable. Like you could put miles on this all day. I would have no trouble taking this for a 1,000K trip in one day. You know, break up your time a little bit in between fuel tanks, take a little bit of rest, and you'd be no problem. There's hardly any weight on your wrists once you get moving. In town, there's a little bit more than the other bikes. But man, when you talk about the stability and the handling and everything that you get for it, it'll be very appealing for a lot of people to have this baby. Okay, now the S version of this bike could be the one that a lot of people want, but you're gonna get some serious downgrades in suspension, braking, and especially that TFT dash. And I haven't felt what it's like, but if you're downgrading the suspension, I'm assuming you're gonna be at or below what the other guys are doing in Japanese bikes. And I really like this R version. The RS, I think, is gonna be the bike for people that take regular track days and the bike's street legal. This is just a little bit the other way around. You're gonna take this bike on the street whenever you want. It's still comfortable enough for it, and it'll perform pretty well. Are they flying south or north? What's going on here? They're in formation. Oh, those things are loud. But you guys, if you're gonna get this R version, I think this is the one for most people in the Triumph Street Triple line. And the RS is gonna be a little hard on you in town. This one will be just perfect, and you can do it up for track days, and it's gonna hang with everything out there. So if you have any experience with that S version, comment down below, because I'd really like to know how it compares and how it stacks up to the Japanese bikes with the downgrades in suspension and some of the options in there. Because this one obviously has a little bit higher grade, and I'd like to know if that S goes lower than what you'd prefer, if it was really soft like how they did it in 2008 when they had to upgrade the suspension into the R version on the 675. I'd like to see what the differences is. So leave your comments down below. It's always good to leave comments. It helps everybody out. We can all read them. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed that completely unbiased, seat of the pants review, done only by a guy who has to either borrow his friends' bikes or pay for them myself. So no sponsorships anyway. That should be completely unbiased. I think I've told you everything that I could tell you by a seat of the pants review without actually owning the bike. I think you're going to enjoy this bike if you take it. Remember to check out our Instagram page at 6's Overdrive if you want some little highlights about what's coming up down the pike. And remember to share, like, comment, and subscribe, because this is 6's Overdrive, and I'm out of here. Bye-bye. Hello.
How are you guys?
Good.
Excellent. That's good. What are you guys up to?
Just reviewing a motorbike for YouTube.
Okay. Motorbike for YouTube?
Yeah, like a motorbike review on YouTube.
Oh, okay. I had some people from the office that were concerned because they saw you guys out here with cameras and stuff.
Oh yeah, that's all. We just wanted a cool background that kind of matched motorcycles and stuff. That's all.
Oh, okay.
Is that all right?
I don't see it as a problem. I know they just don't want you on Husky property is what
Okay.
what I was told. So I said I'd stop out and let you guys
property?
know. If anything on, I guess, on this side of the road would be.
Okay. Well, we'll probably wrap up like in 30 seconds here. I'm on the last point, and then we're going to do the ride on the bike and get out of here.
Okay.
So it'll look like we're just cleaning up and leaving
Okay.
on your end so you don't get yelled at.
Okay. I thought I better come and take a double check.
Okay.
With you guys.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah. See you.
So what do we got now?